It's going. Oh my goodness. Here we are. Good morning. Depending on where you are, it might not be morning. I guess it is lunchtime for you, Scott. We are 30 minutes away from the SpaceX's fifth operational crew launch for NASA this morning, afternoon. I was originally supposed to be in Florida for this, but as we all know, the weather changed things a little bit. It did delay this, and I unfortunately am not there. However, we have we can obviously live stream it, and we have also a unique view from my friend Scott, who is also a rocket scientist and who lives in Florida. So, Scott, let me pop up your camera here for a second, and you explain where you are.
Okay, I'm about 150 miles away. I'm a disembodied voice right now because I'm not clever enough to figure out how to get multiple cameras working. So, this is the most important one. I think people would rather sort of see what I may end up seeing a few seconds after the liftoff today.
Yeah.
So, we've got some slides that if you're not actually at the Cape, there is a way for you to be able to look in the sky. And I will show you quickly what happened to us last week. It was actually serendipity. We came back after sunset. We turned around and we saw what looked like a noctilucent cloud in the sky until we realized it was kind of arcing up. And then we looked down at our watches and realized, oh, that was a Starlink launch. So from 150 miles away, you
Wow.
can actually see it. You don't get the rumble and what you'd be actually being there in the Cape, but you can get it. You can look in that way. And of course, I went back to Google Maps to verify that we were actually looking in the right direction. So we decided, since neither of us could be there, that maybe we'd try a trick here so you could actually get some benefit and learn how you would be able to find where the launch is and which direction to look in. So let me go ahead and see if I am also clever enough to figure out how to bring my slides back up over here. And the easiest thing I think is to make this one go away because this is what we're looking at. Okay, so right now, Ellie is way over here
Not in
in
space.
Portland, not in space, and 39A is way over here in Florida. And Ellie's a little bit too far away to be able to see it, unfortunately.
Darn.
Maybe you'll see it when it comes over top or something like that. You might be able to see it in orbit, but she's a bit too far away, 2,500 miles. But in my case, I'm actually a little bit closer. I'm
Oh,
about 150 miles. Now, I was amazed I could actually see it from that far apart. And I was going to do the calculation this morning, and if I got to do it exactly, how far below the horizon the launch is and how many seconds it would take for us to do that. I'll have to do that calculation as we go along here. And so I looked at this to get an idea of which direction we should go in. So the first thing we want to do is that this is pad 39, A and B.
right, right.
And we can see both. And Ellie, do you want to talk a little bit about the tour we had and why we kind of wanted this close up?
Yeah, so we did the KSC Explore Tour, which is, a little extra um, money, but well worth it because they show you a lot more than just their regular bus tour. And so we got to see, we went to, we went
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
observation gantry.
Yes,
Yeah,
right there. We went there, right where the crawler tracks split,
right.
and it got better. Right, just follow my mouse.
All right. Here, it's hard to see, so yeah,
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we got a little bit closer here, but there is a roadway along here. We took this roadway all the way around there. That's how close we get to pad 39A on the bus.
it was awesome.
And
Well,
then we came up here, and then whoops, and then we drove along here, and Artemis was out there, and from this observation deck, we were able to see it.
and even though it was scrubbed, we still got lucky getting to see it still.
Well, and along the way, the crawler was parked there because they have two crawlers, and one of them was actually kind of parked in a position to be able to get out there in a hurry. And we drove right past it. And Ellie, you've got a couple of nice shots of that you posted.
Yeah.
And that's why we got that, because we went on that tour. Normally, if you go on the normal tour, you're too far away to get that close. So we really recommend it. If
I
you
want to
are a space junkie, do it.
Yeah, I want to know from you guys in the comments how many of you have seen, the most historic famous pad 39A in person. raise your hand or leave a comment. Or if you have ever been to Kennedy Space Center, let us know in the comments. It's definitely worth going. I hadn't been since I was like a little kid, so it was really cool to go now.
And I hadn't been since I was, I think, 14 years old. It
Wow.
had been, and the last time I was there, I saw the Saturn V on the pad, but about 4 months before the launch. They still had what I think they called the service support structure, something like that. This big gray structure that was around there, just servicing that and getting it ready for it. So, and that was Apollo 16. So that was, yep. And so it had been a while, and I hadn't realized that's how you get so close and how we got that close back then.
Do we have any more slides, or can I pop up?
Yeah, I got one more. So here, I stuck a pin down here on 39A, and then whoops, I took it all the way to my house. And from there, I'm able to see what the distance is and then the angle that I need to shoot up. And then I just took this, aligned it over the Google Maps to find any close landmarks. And if you look in the pictures that I have, if you bring up my camera that I have out there right now, you'll sort of see there are two what look like water towers. Okay. And Google Maps is telling me that that's what I need to look at right there. You see right about there? And that it's right about there is where I expect to see the launch. Okay. Now I think it's going to arc this way. I think it's going in a southeasterly direction. So we're going to see something like that. And what I may do is around T-3 minutes, run up to the roof, take a look myself. Nice. And then if I need to adjust the camera, I will. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to try this trick and see if it works out and give everyone sort of a unique perspective. Perfect conditions today. That the fact that it's clear. A lot of times we have so many clouds, you wouldn't really be able to see that far across the state. And I don't know, it's a noontime launch. The last time it was sunset. So is this a trick that only works at sunset, or will it work any time of day?
Man, I wish I could be there. It's a bummer.
Yeah.
And then you had the astronauts on your next slide. Okay, there we go.
Yes, here we go.
So this is a really interesting crew. We have some historic firsts in this crew. We have 3 complete rookies. Let's start with Nicole Mann. So the first Native American woman to be sent to space, the first woman serving as a mission commander for SpaceX.
Yes.
Okay, there she is. Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, that's really awesome. And then we have Josh Quesada, as you mentioned, also a rookie. Okay, there he is.
And I believe he's yeah, they're both fighter pilots and maybe test pilots. And Josh, I believe, has a degree in physics.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. So he's the pilot for this, and Nicole is the commander.
Can you imagine their excitement right now?
Yes. Now he is probably not that excited.
Oh yeah.
Koichi Wakata. Yeah, Koichi Wakata-san or Wakata. And why is he not probably as excited as the other 3?
Well, because he has been on 4 space shuttle missions, 1 Soyuz. He's definitely a veteran of going to space.
This is his 3rd vehicle.
Wow.
3rd vehicle. Wow.
Yeah.
6th time in space. I think he's already served 11 months in space.
Served. That almost sounds
bad. Yeah. And his first trip was back in 1995. So he's in his late 50s. So he's not a spring chicken. Yeah, he's been around. So amazing. So he is the veteran. I mean, quite the veteran.
And he's with the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency.
Yes.
And then we also have a cosmonaut with Roscosmos, Anna Kikina.
Yes.
Also her first time.
Yes. And this is her biography, which may be a little bit difficult. I guess there is an English version. Kind of like my Russian's a little bit rusty, but kind of like Jonathan, if I look at a data sheet, I can kind of figure it out. So up here, it's rather interesting. It says, Biography Cosmonautov SSSR Earth. And basically that means the biography of the cosmonauts of the USSR, or the Soyuz Sovietsky Socialistический Republic, and the Russian Federation. And what we have here is Anna Kikina, and her patronymic is Yorevna, which means her father's name was Yuri. So
Okay.
that's how it goes. And we can tell here the data y nuestro rождения. That pretty much means the date and place of birth. So we know she was born the 27th of Augusta. That's August 1984. And then in Novosibirsk, that's where she was born.
And
And I
I
think
want
in
to show
2012, she became a cosmonaut. Or
and
it was, yep.
check them out there on the NASA stream. I mean, man,
Mhm.
can you imagine just the thoughts going through their mind? I can't.
Yes. Yes, yes. And so this is her first trip as well. And it's rather amazing that her first trip is aboard a NASA flight.
What do you think they're thinking about right now?
You know, that's a good question. You know, we know that John Young and a few of the other Mercury astronauts, they were thinking about the fact that every part was made by the lowest bidder.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh my God.
and they have gone through this so many times. They are literally desensitized. That's what astronaut training is all about, is to desensitize you to so many things that when you're up there, you're almost, you know, relaxed. In some cases, some of the astronauts, you know, the Mercury 7 astronauts would fall asleep up top while they were waiting because sometimes they had all these really long holds for hours and hours. Their heart rates in some cases were almost like, you know, very low heart rates. I think Gordo Cooper was famous that he practically had no heart rate because he was so relaxed. But
Wow.
yeah, if it was me, I think my heart would be racing. That's for sure. That's for sure.
I do see a comment from Stephen watching via Starlink, and Scott, you're
Yes, yes. When I go up top, yeah, we're using Starlink up. So when I go up top, I can show everyone that once the launch is over, I'll point my camera over that way.
yes,
So yeah, yeah,
one post show that you're not going to see on NASA's live
yeah.
stream. We're going to have our own post commentary here. Man, I just can't believe like last month we were driving around seeing this in person.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. That's so cool. This is so I've still only seen one launch in person. Obviously wanted to see SLS. That didn't happen, but I did get to see a Falcon 9 launch, and of course today they're using a Falcon 9 rocket, but yeah.
Yeah. Now the thing I have to be a little careful here of, and I've learned the hard way, is sometimes the live stream is about 30 seconds behind the actual launch. So when you're there at Kennedy and you're relying on that 30 seconds to go, it's already up. So you need to make sure your eyes are in the right direction.
Right.
So I have to figure out how long it's going to take me to climb upstairs to get there because I want to make sure I have enough time. So I'm going to probably do it at T-3.
Okay.
And then I hopefully my headset will still be working up at that range.
I
And
was
then
gonna say, will we still be able to hear you?
yeah, I hope so. Yeah. If I stand in the right spot, it's okay. You know, so I kind of know where the sweet spot is, where it's going to work. But at least you should be able to see the camera.
So let's talk a little bit about, they're scheduled to launch at noon, and they're expected to dock to the ISS in about 5 hours at 4:57 p.m. your
Hmm.
time, East Coast time. 6:42 p.m. is when they're expecting to have the hatch opening, and then they're going to have their welcome ceremony on Friday if all goes according to plan at 8:15 p.m. Again, these are all East Coast times that I'm
Yep.
referencing.
Yeah.
Man, so cool.
Yeah. And that's actually pretty quick. I don't think it's the record. I think some of the Soyuzes were able to chase it down really quick and maybe like in about the order of one orbit. Usually it takes more than a day for them to do that. They get up there, they get acclimated, and then they just start kind of chasing very slowly to get up to the vehicle. So
Huh.
the fact that that's doing it in a matter of hours is quite an improvement.
Wow.
And some of it was probably getting safety margins in there and making sure everything was all right. But the other is just the orbital mechanics. It takes a while to be able to intercept something else in orbit. It's not something that you can do in 5 or 10 minutes. You need to adjust the orbital parameters enough that you go a little bit faster. So,
So fun fact
yeah.
here, the
Mhm.
VAB building that we're looking at when we did the tour, they told us those stars are 6 feet across in diameter, which was crazy. They even had one at ground level. And I mean, you laid on it and it was about 6 feet, even though it didn't look 6 feet. Remember that?
Yes, and we didn't believe it, and we finally laid down on it to prove
Yeah.
it.
But
So it was one of those things, because the stars don't go straight across, the distance doesn't look right. But if you draw the circle around them and then lay yourself out at 6 feet.
okay, so Scott, Steve says, I might be wrong. I think the orbital rendezvous requirements have the vehicle launching to a northeast trajectory, like halfway up
Okay,
to Florida.
that's possible. That's possible. So it's either going to be northeast or southeast, depending upon whether you're which node you're on on the orbit. So as it goes around, sometimes it will appear to you that the ISS is heading in a southeasterly direction, and then halfway around the orbit, if you're on the around there, it'll look like it's going kind of northeast. I think the inclination might be something like 23 degrees. Someone might be able to correct that for me, but it's an inclined orbit. That means it's able to see a lot. It might be more than 23 degrees, because I think that's about where Kennedy is. But then you got to remember, they're also launching from where the Soyuz is being launched. I think is at a different latitude, so they probably have something in there to be able to accommodate both of them. But yeah, it'll depend upon which direction the ISS is going over top. So it's either going to be southeast or northeast. I was guessing southeast. I didn't check it out before the live stream. And so that means it'll be kind of going up the Atlantic.
So we have people joining us watching from all around the globe. Stephen says it's 2:30 a.m. in Australia, but as always, I'm up for launch, especially crewed. It is just more exciting when it's a crewed launch, right? And
Yes.
we read they're going to be there for about 5 to 6 months. I've seen conflicting articles, but
yes, trying to understand that. So I guess the Dragon capsule must be rated to be able to stay at least 5 or 6 months in orbit. In the old days, when the shuttle went up there, it was, I think, only rated about 2 weeks that it could stay up before it had to return. So anyone that was on the space station for a long time, they kind of get the ride up there, and then their ride left. And they had to either wait for a ride, but they always had the a Soyuz on standby that was rated to be able to survive a lot longer in orbit. So I'm not sure if they're doing a crew swap right away, and this Dragon is returning with the current crew that's up there, or whether this is going to remain docked the entire time.
all right, we have Barney. Hello from the UK. Hello. Thank you guys for letting me know where you're watching from. It's always interesting to see. I just love the internet. Connects all of us, right? Let's see. Yeah, they're saying it's a stunning day at the Kennedy Space Center, which, man, I so wish. So I was supposed to be there, like in the press credentialed area. And obviously the weather kind of had me hesitant for should I go? And then there was a delay. And then there was a question of if they were going to still kind of have the whole press adventure. But I went to AI Day instead. And then I was supposed to get a wisdom tooth surgery. So anyway, that has also been delayed. So anyway, I guess that's all to say. I wish I were there, but at least we can still watch it on the live stream. I mean, thank goodness, right? It's just amazing the technology that we have and how easily connected we are. Hopefully easily. Maybe not everyone has that access, but
yeah, we'll find out. It's rather amazing that you're in Portland, I'm here, and my camera's up on the roof somehow working. And
we're sharing all 3 cameras on the stream.
Yes.
Shout out to StreamYard, not sponsored by StreamYard, but I just switched from Zoom to StreamYard, and I just think it's a great platform. So if you're looking to do any live streams yourself, highly recommend. Don't waste your time with Zoom. Go right to StreamYard.
Yeah. I need a little training to figure out how to switch from one camera to another. I'm sure you can do it. It just 5 minutes before I wasn't going to experiment.
Okay, so we're less than 12 minutes out. Wow. Feel like we're getting ready for a newscast, it's like 5 minutes to show. Stand by.
Oh yeah, exactly. Wow, you're back in the newsroom and I'm the one out in the field. This is interesting.
Yeah, you're my live reporter. Oh my God. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Toss it now to Scott and Walter in the field.
Oh, okay. Do you want to do a quick recap of what's going on and what that
Yeah,
camera is all about for
let's
those
do
who just joined?
let's do. Okay, wait, hold on. Steven says, Ellie, you got to see Elon in person better than a rocket launch. Maybe he knows that I just saw Elon in person. He must be saying that because okay. Well, yeah. It was great. Although rocket launch is also great. So I'd take both. Okay, so let's recap.
Quick recap. Just go to my share right now.
Okay.
So the quick recap is, yes, Ellie is over here in Portland and the launch site is way over here. So she can't quite see it where she is, but I am in Florida, about 150 miles away.
Say where you are.
I'm in the Tampa Bay area. So
Okay.
it's right around here. It's 150 miles. And what we did is I went into Google and went to the Launchpad 39A and did a measure distance from there right to the top of my house.
Wow.
And from there, I get this nice long line and I can zoom in on that line and start looking for landmarks. And one of the landmarks I looked for that I could see was kind of passing just a little bit to the right of a couple of water towers.
Okay.
And that's what you were seeing in the camera. So if you make my camera a little bit bigger, we'll see that. So I'm pretty confident I'm pointed in the right direction. So these are the two water towers I'm talking about. I know it's a little bit to the right, so it's going to be somewhere there. But look, I've got enough error margin here. And so if it's going to the northeast, then it's going to be like that launch the other day that I saw from here. It's going to kind of streak off in this direction. And I can show that quickly. My screen share once again. This is what I saw about 10 days ago. It would have been 10 days. It was Saturday evening, coming right back at sunset. And this was a Starlink launch from Slick 40. So very close by. That's what I'm expecting to see, is something like that. And then it'll probably be going in the same direction if it's going in kind of a northeasterly direction. So that's the quick recap of what we're doing. This little experiment of how you can watch a launch from maybe 150 miles out, maybe 200, so it depends. And remember, this particular launch was seen by people, at least the second stage, all the way up the East Coast.
Isn't that crazy?
There were pictures of people in New York City and New England. I think I even heard maybe Finland and others were able to see quite a bit as it streaked over. So you get the big jellyfish because it was at night. Day will be a little bit trickier, but yeah, you'll be able to see it. So if anyone's in Orlando, go outside and just look east. I've done that before. I ran outside and I just looked east and you will see it.
All right.
Because they're much closer there.
If you're in Orlando, look east. And if you're in, gosh, where exactly was that city where we went to that Wizard of Oz museum? Which city? Was that in Melbourne?
Cocoa Beach.
Cocoa Beach. Okay.
Cocoa Beach. Yep.
So fun fact, if you go to Florida and you go to Cocoa Beach, there is such a thing as a Wizard of Oz museum with everything you could ever dream to know about.
Oh yeah. I didn't realize how many Wizard of Oz books there were.
I had no idea. No idea. It's crazy. So I don't know if you're a Wizard of Oz fan. I'm a fan. Yeah, man. Florida's cool. Okay. Solar Independent Utility Systems Manual says going right over my place. I'll try and get video as it goes by. Thanks for sharing.
Super.
Of awesomeness. Great White Evo X. You can see it from Tampa as well. And
yes, absolutely. So, wherever you are in Tampa, look east. And if you've got time, go to Google Earth and do exactly what I did, so you know exactly the direction you need to look in, but you'll see it.
And Matt Cook says, I'm in Merritt Island and can see every launch. Yes, you're very close.
I would think so. And not only that, you hear every launch. If you forget about it, you still hear it.
See, that was one thing. We watched the Falcon 9 launch, my first and only launch in person from the Max Brewer Bridge, and didn't really feel it, at all. We were too far away.
Yeah, but I found the spot that's not that far. You continue over the bridge, and there's a place, and I made a little video of it, of a night launch of Starlink that I just captured on my phone in the Model Y, and I could not believe how big the rumble was. So if you ever see that and play it back, crank it up to 11, something with good bass, it's rather amazing. and you get that beautiful rumble that's kind of going on this bass, and then the staccato right at the end when you just kind of goes through. It's quite nice to be close enough to feel it.
Mark says, will you be back at KSC for Artemis 1 in late November? My plan is yes.
Yep.
So
my plan too. Yeah. Whenever it is. Been to 2 scrubs already, you know. We'll add 1 more.
That's the fear with going, man. Like, but there's, I mean, I still have some fun interviews planned for next time I go to Florida. I have these Starfleet tours, which are the tours by boat. They've committed to wanting to do an interview, so that'll be cool. Yeah. Hopefully get to meet up with Felix again for another interview. I was thinking that our next interview should be at the rock climbing gym. I thought that would be a fun way to interview.
Oh, does he climb too?
No.
Oh yeah, okay. So he's a Gumby like me, but the thing about rock climbing, you don't have to be an expert. You can be a beginner, and you will still have lots of fun.
And there's still stuff that you can try.
Oh yeah.
But,
And boy, is it a workout. Woo!
Okay. Joe says your stream is 30 seconds behind NASA SpaceX's stream. So that's good.
Could be. Yeah, that's good for me to know, which means when I'm saying going up at 3 minutes, I need to go up when I see 4 minutes on there.
I mean, I appreciate everyone who's tuning in because I have never live streamed or commentated
Actually,
on a launch.
I think it's supposed to go at exactly noon, and my watch says it's 3 minutes to noon right now. I don't think it's supposed to go at 12:01. I think they said it's supposed to go at 12. So I've got my watch here.
Okay, so
I'm going to wander up, and then hopefully my audio is still there.
Okay, wander up, and I'm going to make sure to kick the volume on their stream up here soon because.
Yeah, and if you hear too much grunting and groaning from me, just mute me.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Oh man! Oh my God, this is so crazy. I'm like so excited, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm nervous. I mean, you know, it's just yeah. Wow. That's not too bad. So it takes me nonstop to fly to where you are, about 5.5 hours. So they'll be at the ISS in less time. That's cool. A little less time. Gregory says, cheers from Alaska. Cheers. Okay. Let me kick up their volume a little bit here. Actually, let me.
And the transporter erector is what provides the liquids, the gases, and the electrical connections to the vehicle. It's also what we use to integrate the vehicle in its horizontal position. And you can see that 2-degree retraction just now.
And the next call out that we should hear in about 20 seconds is that the first stage LOX load is complete.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And there we go. All of the oxidizers loaded on stage 1. Soon we'll hear that stage 2 LOX load is complete, and that will be the last propellant call out we'll hear today. Now less than 3 minutes until launch.
Dragon is in terminal count and is on internal power.
All right, there we heard the good news that Dragon is now on internal power. Again, the white clouds that you see there at the base of the Dragon trunk, totally normal. That's just the vapor from the liquid oxygen. Again, second stage now wrapping up its LOX load. Excuse me, first stage wrapping up its LOX load just a few minutes ago, and now moving toward wrap up of second stage LOX load, which will complete at T-2 minutes.
Coming up on 2 minutes until liftoff, standing by for word that stage 2 LOX load has been completed.
Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. Can you guys hear the stream from NASA? Can you comment? Just want to make sure you have their volume. Pointy end up,
Dragon is in auto
pointy
idle.
end down, yes.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
There we heard the call out Falcon 9 is now completely fueled, all of its propellants. So
Okay, yes, you can hear me and them.
all of its
Perfect.
propellants, and we can see that leftover liquid oxygen now being vented or released, now flowing further away from the vehicle. So nearly 1 million pounds of liquid oxygen in RP1 now on board Falcon 9 is fully loaded and ready for launch.
And coming up at T-minus 1 minute, we'll hear that Dragon is in countdown. Its flight computer will switch to countdown mode, and we'll hear that the flight termination system on Falcon 9 is armed.
FPS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup and is now controlling.
And there you heard it, Dragon's
countdown.
Dragon's flight computer in countdown. The flight termination system now armed.
Oh my God.
She hit the final go for launch from SpaceX launch director Mark
Dragon,
Surtees.
SpaceX. Godspeed. Go for launch.
3 of them. This is their first time going to space. I can't imagine like the excitement.
SpaceX reports go. Crew reports go. 30 seconds until liftoff.
Oh my God, I want to cry.
T-minus 15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh my God. Oh my God. There's... Oh my God.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Vehicle is pitching downrange. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
I don't know why I'm breathing for them, but this is just so
We're
crazy.
now at T plus 35 seconds into the 5th rotational crew mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9.
So far, nothing up here.
Coming up in just a few seconds, we'll hear the call out for stage 1 throttle down.
Stage 1 throttle down.
Falcon 9 engines throttling down to help pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure.
This period is known as max Q, and once the vehicle there we just heard that the vehicle is now traveling faster than the speed of sound. Once the max Q is throttled, the thermal engines back up.
Max Q. Stage 1 throttle up. Stage 1 throttle.
I'm seeing it on his cameras.
Copy 1 Bravo.
That call out for 1 Bravo means we're in the second and final abort mode for the first stage, continuing to get good performance. The crew is already pulling over 2 Gs. And next up is going to be a couple of events in rapid succession. First will be engine chill on the second stage and back engine. And there you heard that call out. And then we'll have MECO, or main engine cutoff, where the 9 engines igniting will cut off in preparation for second stage separation.
How many
Then
of you
we'll see the
want to
single
do this?
Merlin vacuum
How
engine
many
on
of
the
you
second stage
would love to
ignite
be
and
one
continue
of
to carry
those
the Crew
four?
5 astronauts to orbit.
Just like we did on first stage, that MVAC chill is intended to help pre-chill the hardware prior to the full flow of that densified liquid oxygen.
Is that it out there in the distance? Can you guys tell?
At this point in time, those 9 Merlin engines are beginning to throttle down in preparation for MECO, or main engine cutoff.
Standing by for MECO.
And MECO.
Stage 2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed. Copy 2 Alpha.
There we should see that second engine begin to ignite now. And obviously confirmed by the loud cheer behind us here at Mission Control on board.
And we're also in 2 Alpha for the aborts if needed. Again, second stage is lit and continuing to carry the Crew 5 astronauts into orbit.
We're now getting a view of the first stage after that stage separation. The second stage still being illuminated by that single Merlin vacuum engine, and that's on the right-hand side of your screen. First stage on the left-hand side of your screen, making its way back to Earth. We will be attempting to land it on our drone ship, which today we are using Just Read the Instructions.
Acquisition signal, repeat up.
And we did hear that acquisition of the ground station in Bermuda. The first stage is continuing to make its way back to Earth, and the second stage is going to continue. Another good call, trajectory nominal.
Confirmation there from Commander Nicole Mann. You can also sort of see the Space Coast there in the background of the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen. It also looks like you can actually see the thrust plume created by the first stage as it's now rotating just out of screen.
Wow.
Second stage is going to continue firing until a little over 8 minutes into the flight, really doing the heavy lifting now, getting the crew into orbit.
This is from my friend who is in Florida.
Everything continues to look nominal on both first and second stages. As I mentioned before, the first stage will be making a landing on one of our drone ships, which is currently parked a couple hundred miles off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. So we can see now that
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory help.
good confirmation there that we have good trajectory.
The second stage now traveling over 5,400 miles per hour. Crew is pulling a little more than 1G right now. That's going to continue to ramp up, peaking just before we get to second stage cutoff here in just a few minutes from now.
First stage will be performing 2 separate burns, a re-entry burn where we reignite 3 of the Merlin the Merlin M1D engines on the first stage. We ignite the center engine into radial engines to help slow it down as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. And then the second final burn, and that will be the landing burn on our drone ship.
Yes, I am. So I'm back down.
Single and back engine that you see.
Turn yourself down, or maybe turn yourself down a little bit. Keep it loud.
Okay, let's see what we can do with the mic. Is this okay?
It's very loud. Is there any way to get it a
I'm
little further away?
going to try. Oh,
Right.
I'm speaking very lightly. I'm almost whispering right now. I need to find the audio control.
I don't think you're okay, wait. No, I can do it. Okay.
Good,
Once
good.
again. Is the volume good for you guys? It was a little hot there at first.
Yeah.
So I muted the stream and we can talk a little bit now. Snowflake's Nightmare says, what are those things moving on the right?
Okay, in which screen? So you talk about the thrusters. Those are the cold gas thrusters.
Gotta be.
Yeah. So on the right, you do see what is the thermal protection foil. That's probably around the second stage engine, and that kind of moves around a little bit because you still have a little bit of I guess you could say atmosphere and vibrations that are going through that would be causing that kind of movement.
David says, I think the things moving on the right are ice crystals from the liquid oxygen lines.
Mm-hmm. Could be. Yep.
Huh. Interesting. Oh, wow. That's so cool. Man, can you imagine having that view right now?
Yeah, and that looks like that's probably the reentry burn, which I don't think is getting picked up on my camera.
Okay, let me.
But I don't know. Was anyone able to notice the vapor trail that kind of came from that? Okay, because it came kind of late, and at one point it was there. I could clearly see it.
We
not as
momentarily
okay.
we saw it.
Yeah, and it's dissipated right now. It only went up to a certain layer of the atmosphere, and then that was it. I couldn't see any more. Whereas the last time we saw it, it seemed like it lasted a lot longer.
So the only problem, I know you wanted to show some people on your roof, but your headset gets really loud. So I think you should just stay where you are. But
Yeah.
how exciting was that? That was so cool. I had our friend Tesla Bob, if you don't know why I'm referring to him as that, he runs a fleet of Teslas on Turo, and he sent me this image.
Of course,
So he's
he's
not far away. He's actually in Vieira, Florida. But
yep, he's a little bit closer.
Yeah.
But
So
the thing that worked out is that vapor trail showed up exactly where I was expecting it to be. So it was dead on. So that trick works.
Yeah, good. Barney says SpaceX cameras have gotten so much better from their early launches. Oh, yeah. Hands down. So,
whoops, and then it goes off. Okay.
I just say that. I jinxed it.
But it's true that I don't know if they've improved the resolution, but certainly the connectivity has improved quite a bit, and it's very stable. Like right now, here's Starlink. This is the test of Starlink.
Here's the landing. Let's go. The drone ship coming into view. Okay. Boom.
And it did not cut out. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, seriously.
That's Starlink Marine right there.
I still can't believe we can do this.
Yes. Now, the other thing that amazed me is that if I go up top, I can maybe show some stuff and attempt to narrate a little bit later.
Okay.
But where I mounted my camera is actually on the hatch. I have to go up to get access to the roof because it was a lot easier to put it on the hatch than anywhere else in the roof. The problem is when I open the hatch, that means the antenna moves.
Okay.
Now, did you notice when I went up there, was there any loss of signal?
It was very there was a loud humming. I wouldn't go up there again.
The humming as far as the audio, but as far as what you were seeing on the camera there, if the camera dropped, if it did not drop, now I was moving the antenna around and there was no loss of signal because the phased array compensated for the fact that I was moving it.
Yeah.
So you can have a lot of jiggling and movement like that. I was really surprised. I thought the signal would cut out. So if you did not see that camera drop, it's because it was robust enough to be able to handle a little bit of movement and shaking like that. So I tilted it easily 60 degrees from being horizontal, and it still worked.
David says, embarrassed to say I like the landing even more than watching the astronauts. I mean, the landing's pretty dang cool.
Yeah. I have to agree. That's why I love watching these things, is I just want to see the landings.
Yeah. Wow. Flawless landing, absolutely. And even flawless signal. That's not always the case.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how was it from your much closer view than me?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't have the live stream up there with me. I was just trying to look at it, and it seemed like it took a little bit longer to show up, and then suddenly, boom, there it was. And then I could see the trail. And at least you knew there was a launch, but you don't get the vibration and everything else. I mean, you really want to be there. So yeah, I get to say I had kind of my eyes on it. I saw a launch, but you didn't miss that much, Ellie. You know, don't have to be that jealous. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You can see their control room there. I don't know if I should turn the volume on. Is there anything you want to say about this next part, Scott?
Oh, separation, the second stage. Okay. So what we're seeing is now they separated from the second stage, so they must have a good orbit. So that's inside the trunk, and now the second stage is on a trajectory that it's going to burn up, which means if they're both on the same trajectory, also the Dragon capsule is not in a full orbit yet, but it just needs a little bit of delta V, and then it will be in there. And they do that intentionally because they do want the second stage to not become space junk. And they have enough delta V in the Dragon space capsule to be able to get it into the orbit that they need. And we can see a few thrusters there. That's maneuvering thrusters. I don't know if that's just to pull away. And they will be catching up, and they are probably in an orbit slightly below the ISS. So they haven't quite got up to there. And the reason for that is that they can orbit the Earth a little bit faster, just a couple of minutes faster than the ISS. And so as they start to get closer, they're going to raise the orbit through a series of burns that will probably circularize it and make them just about match.
Okay.
And then you have the very, very slow approach on that. So it seems like they're saying it's going to be around almost 5 o'clock when that happens. So that's 5 hours from now. So that's about 3 orbits. So there's about 3 or 3.5 orbits to catch up.
I want to shout out Bimmer Geezer. Thank you so much for the super chat. The 2 most beautiful things on YouTube, SpaceX crew launch and Eliana Sheriff in one video. My day is now perfect. Wow. Well, thank you so much. That is so sweet of you. Yeah, I figured, I wasn't sure how many people would want to join the stream because there's the NASA stream, the SpaceX stream, but I just thought it would be interesting to kind of share this moment. That was my intention for going, but there will be future launches that I will be at in person. So, but it's always exciting to see people sent into space. So look at them clapping there. Oh my gosh. I can't imagine like the sense of relief and excitement, especially for the 3 that have never done it before. Anna Kakina, Josh Quesada, Nicole Mann, first woman serving as a mission commander for SpaceX. Girl power.
That was an interesting view of the Dragon capsule from the second stage.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Now, probably the burn they're going to do is going to be on the opposite side of the Earth. So when you go into orbit, you don't go straight into a circular orbit. Usually you have a perigee and an apogee, and the apogee will be pretty high, but the perigee, which is going to be the lower part, could technically be almost back in the Earth's atmosphere. And what you need to do is you need to raise that a little bit. And so when they get to what will be their apogee, they will do the burn there. And that actually raises the perigee, the lower part, to circularize it. So usually when you want to circularize a burn in orbit, it's always 180 degrees from where you want to raise it. So right now they're going around and they're probably at some point along there, they're going to do the burn, which will help to circularize or raise it to make sure that they don't accidentally re-enter. But the second stage is on its original trajectory, which is going to bring it over in, I don't know if it's going to burn up in one orbit or whether they're still going to take a couple of orbits wherever it is. And it's also likely that they don't want it right away to go into orbit in case there's something wrong with it and they need to abort and come back. And maybe something's happened that won't allow the capsule to return on its own power, and you just got to wait for it to return. So there could be all sorts of procedures they put in place just for making sure the crew is always safe.
Well, who's up for a little lesson with Scott Walters this morning, rocket scientist? Scott, let's talk about ISP.
You want to talk about ISP? Okay.
ISP. You gave a great explanation of that. And for some of you that may not be familiar, let's bring you a little education.
Okay. So when we talk about ISP, sometimes they say specific impulse, and the I is the I in ISP, or impulse rather, and SP is specific. So usually it's written out as a capital I with a little SP, so specific impulse. And when you look in the tables that are comparing all the different rockets, you'll see that, the shuttle had an ISP of 450. And I think the Merlin engine might be like 375 or something like that. And Raptor's getting close to 400 and they're always in seconds. And that sounds like really weird. It's like, why are they in seconds? Has anyone ever wondered that? And there's a simple understanding of what those seconds mean. And that is basically, it's the amount of time it would take a rocket engine to consume the same amount of propellant that is equal to the thrust that it can deliver. Okay, because the actual units of ISP are not seconds. They are actually thrust divided by propellant consumption rate. Okay, propellant consumption rate means how quickly you are consuming an amount of propellant, and they measure it actually in weight and not in mass. So basically, it's like if you think of thrust as a weight, which it is, it's a force. Weight is a force. You get a force divided by a force per second. And the forces cancel out. The seconds does a backflip, comes to the top, and you end up with seconds. So everyone thinks the units are seconds, but there are these hidden units that are in there. So what that means, I have a rocket that can deliver, and I will keep it international and say newtons. So newtons is the SI units for force. Yes. So let's say we have 1,000,000 newtons of thrust, and I am able, in order to deliver that amount of thrust, I have to consume 5,000 newtons of propellant. In other words, that's how much the propellant would weigh if I put it on a scale per second. So that means 1,000,000 divided by 5,000, you get 200. So that means it will take me 200 seconds to sip through 1,000,000 newtons of propellant. Why is that important? You may ask. Do you want to ask?
Why is that important?
Okay, well, let's imagine I have this ideal rocket engine in which all the mass is just propellant. It weighs 1,000,000 newtons on the launch pad, and I have a rocket engine that can deliver maximum 1,000,000 newtons of thrust, which means they just balance out, right? That means I have just enough thrust to be able to go through that in 200 seconds, or just enough propellant that's going to take me 200 seconds. But you might say, oh, I'm going to be really smart. I'm going to make a bigger tank, and I'm now going to have 2,000,000 newtons of propellant sitting there in the launch pad. That means I can run it not for 200 seconds, but for 400 seconds. But that's a fool's errand, because the first 200 seconds, you are going to be consuming all of that propellant just to make the vehicle light enough that you now have enough thrust to get off the pad. So what that basically says is that if I've got 1,000,000 pounds thrust, I can't have a rocket more than 1,000,000 pounds. And if my ISP is 200, that means 200 seconds, I'm out of fuel. So that's one way of kind of gauging it. It doesn't mean it's going to take 200 seconds to go that way, because an ideal rocket engine, the first stage is only about 70% of the actual mass. And then you have to remember there's structural mass and everything else around there. But as a rule of thumb, pretty much you can say it's kind of like rocket runtime. That's the upper limit on how long that rocket engine could really burn before you run out of fuel. And the thing about weight, we know we have a different weight on the moon as we do on the Earth. Same with propellant. So the ISP is a very Earth-centric measurement for rocket performance. And that's the crazy thing about it, is because it really only makes sense on Earth. It doesn't make sense on the moon. It doesn't make sense on the planet Kerbal. It's going to be different.
So, like, what is the, margin for error, or the padding or cushion for that?
I mean, as far as making sure they have enough propellant.
Yeah.
Yeah, they always have enough margin. And I mean, first, you're always going to have a little bit of waste, because whenever you make cake, there's always a little bit of batter left over in the bowl. And it's the same thing. You always need to have a little excess just to be able to keep pushing the stuff through the pipes. So you're always going to have a little bit of margin there. And there's more than enough. Even on landing, the Falcon 9 is not completely empty. There's still a little bit left in the tank. And I think they actually need a little bit in the tank, because they have too much thrust. If it comes in too light, it's really hard to land. They have too much. So there is a little bit, because you always need just that extra to be able to go through. And I'm glad to see that someone says, finally, you understand ISP. And I absolutely agree, because I never understood ISP as a kid when I was looking at the Apollo rockets. But I memorized the tables. I knew, hydrogen and oxygen was the highest one and the best fuel you want to do. But I really didn't understand why it was in seconds. But I could spout it off the dinner table and everything else. Everyone was just impressed. And it wasn't until in one of my classes, and it said right there in black and white in one paragraph exactly what it meant. I'm like, oh, that makes sense now. Now I get it. But I haven't seen anyone else really be able to describe it that way. And at some point, maybe if you twist my arm hard enough, I'll make an evergreen video that explains it again, that everyone can look at. that's what it is, And I think the actual way that they phrase it in the books is also very hard to understand. You just have to think about it. My rocket has a certain amount of thrust, and it needs to consume a certain amount of fuel to produce that thrust.
Right.
How long before it uses up the same amount of fuel equal to my thrust? Same thing with your automobile. You know, if you want to get 100 horsepower or 200 horsepower out of your car, it's consuming gasoline at a certain rate. And whatever that is, you know, is the fuel consumption rate. And you could do that with a car engine. You could ask some question. All right, how long does it take my 100 horsepower motor to consume 1 gallon of gasoline?
Speaking of
Yeah.
cars, thank you for Stephen for the super chat for the Ellie Tesla Fund. Great video as always and great live stream. Scott, you can attest to how much I've been thinking about getting a Tesla and
Yes,
telling you
yes.
about it. It's a hard decision because they're so expensive, but man, after taking a road trip to Palo Alto in the Tesla, and I'm working on that. So thank you for contributing to that, because that is a goal. That is a goal. David says also confusing is weight versus mass in Newton.
Oh, it's that
kilograms.
absolutely agree with him, because normally physicists and in rocket science and everyone that's working in thermodynamics, you measure flow rates 2 ways, you know, liters per second or mass per second, or yeah, I should say, yeah, so volume per second or mass per second, which could be kilograms per second or liters per second. Liters you don't like to use unless it's a true fluid or a liquid, because we know gases are very hard to measure volumetrically because it depends upon the pressure. So for instance, we do purchase gasoline in gallons, but we purchase propane in pounds. Why is that? Because propane expands. So usually the best way to measure the amount of something you have is as a mass. And so usually when they talk about consumption, they talk about a mass flow rate. So it's always kilograms per second or pounds per second. But for some reason, the rocket scientists decided, oh, we're going to throw a G in there, or what they call a G sub C, multiply the mass and turn it into a weight, just because it conveniently canceled out the thrust. But I agree with you. It's really confusing. It's the only time anywhere in any of my science classes that I saw that you measured a consumption rate as a weight per second versus a mass per second. And that's why ISP could be a little bit confusing.
So I'm trying to look up the information for this, but can we talk about ISP, like, for example, with Falcon 9? Do you have those numbers off the top of your head?
Falcon 9, I think it's somewhere in the mid 300s, somewhere around there. And Raptor is going to be a little bit higher. So it's mid to low 300s, I think. If I look, I used to have the ISP tables around there, but it's somewhere around there. And now there's the actual ISP they can develop, and there's a theoretical. So liquid or hydrolox, hydrogen and oxygen, have a theoretical ISP of like 532. But you can, that's theoretical. The best that has ever been achieved has been on a space shuttle, and that's 450. So, and chemists can actually work this out. There's some simple equations where, depending upon what the fuel that you're using that you put in, you can go ahead and come up with what the theoretical amount should be. So you go through all these tables and you figure out, do I want to use kerosene and oxygen? Do I want to use, alcohol and hydrogen peroxide? What's the ISP I'm going to get? And then you have to balance it off of like, well, how easy is it to use these types of fuels? So if you're a hobbyist, you're not using liquid oxygen. You're going to use something else, as like, hydrogen peroxide or something like that for your oxidizer. You're not going to use you're going to use maybe kerosene because it's just much easier to handle. But when you have higher technology and you realize, oh, that hydrogen and that oxygen looks really tempting, what do we do? And then you decide that you're going to go for there because you're going to get that additional efficiency. So
Chris
what it comes down to,
Chris Smart says, great stream, Ellie, from me and work in the UK. You guys, I want to also point out that my guest here is a rocket scientist. You can't see him. Maybe, Scott, is there any way to switch so that we can see you? But if you guys have any questions, Scott can pretty much.
What I think I'd have to do is I'd have to leave the stream and jump back in, because that was the only way I could figure out. There is probably a clever way, but the only way I could figure out how to change the camera.
Do you want to try that, since we're kind
I will try that, and we'll get right back in. So just give me a minute. Yep.
So if you guys are curious how I know Scott, Scott is one of my Patreon supporters. So thank you very much to him for that. And he also lives in Florida. So when I took this trip to Florida last month, he kind of, helped host me and show me around, and also helped be my cameraman for a couple of the videos that I was filming. But we did a tour at KSC, and just like the knowledge that he has is unbelievable. So very happy that he was willing and happy to co-host this with me. So if you guys have any questions, I mean, even if you think that they're stupid questions or anything about rockets, like, now is the time to ask them. He's also a roboticist. So if you have any questions, okay, here we go. Add to stream. All right. And you're back.
And we're back.
Oh man, sorry guys. I tried to brush my hair, but
And here we are. Yes, we made it. Yeah, I put this thing on here just because I wanted to remind us to talk about this.
Yes,
we did earlier in the stream. This is the Explorer tour that you need to go on.
So I was telling people how I know you through my Patreon, and then we've hung out now in Florida and Austin, and Scott is the real deal. He really is. So
yeah,
you guys have any questions?
I'm what you would call a lapsed rocket scientist. I got the degree in aerospace engineering and all, and then somehow I took a turn into the robotics field. So it's always been a passion ever since I was a little kid. Picked up on all these things, and that's why I'm really quite impressed with what they were able to do. Because back in my time, the idea of being able to land a rocket back was just considered crazy. That was something that was very difficult, and you just threw them away.
Sci-fi.
And now you can see, yeah, it is. It's absolute sci-fi.
Wow. Okay. All right. Woo! We got some questions for you. Gregory from Alaska. He says, questions for Scott. How was the hurricane, and when will Ellie launch into space? Well, we'll first do the when will Ellie launch into space, because that's probably the shorter answer, which is I don't know. But so many of you guys are saying that, I'm almost wondering if it's
but the thing is, those were two questions for me. Okay, the one was how was the hurricane, the other is when. So I'm supposed to answer that, I guess.
All right, I figured.
I don't know. I guess when the Patreon step up enough, then we can pay off Jeff Bezos enough money that we can send you up.
I can't. I can't even imagine how I would feel.
Yes.
I feel.
Okay, so the hurricane, I was extremely fortunate. It's 24 hours before it was actually forecast to go right over my head, and it moved 60 miles south, and so we went from being on what would have been the really bad quadrant for that we would have had a storm surge, to suddenly now being the quadrant where we get the anti-surge, and actually some of the canals around here, we've never seen the bottom of the canals that they emptied out, according to those that stayed. Now, I was thinking of staying, but I was like, it's kind of risky. So I went to higher ground close by in Sarasota, actually a Whole Foods parking garage that was well covered and everything. And there weren't that many people there. So it was protected. It was well above whatever potential surge there could be.
Okay.
But yeah, I had a lump in my throat when I was driving around, sort of when it was like, all right, you can start heading back. And I went by a sign that said, Fort Myers, 60 miles. And it's like, wow, it really was that close. Now, to give you an idea of what's going on is that, remember, if you look at Florida, you've got the panhandle up here, and the storm was going right up like that. And it was either going to kind of hit Tallahassee or maybe move a little bit that way. And then you've got the rest of the state, which is like this way. Okay. And so, I guess, however, so the storm was like going to be going past the coast here. If it, if it was getting very close to Tallahassee and you had that little angular change that ended up happening right towards the end, that would have been maybe a 15-mile change. But because it was kind of parallel to the coast, that little deviation went from Tampa Bay all the way down to Fort Myers. So you got it caused 60 miles just because of the geometry of what was going on. So when you live along the coast and you see it storming, kind of going up this way, that's when you get to be a bit worried, because it doesn't take much of a change for it to decide to come inland. So it may seem like it's out there. If it's up here and they're saying it's going to hit Tallahassee, it's going to hit Tallahassee, or it's going to be very close by. So that's what happened. It's just this, and it's what's called parallax. And we all understand parallax. If I ask you, Ellie, to shoot a goal from the penalty line, in soccer or from midfield, which is easier to do?
Oh God, I don't like these pop
Well,
quizzes.
think about it. Yeah, if you're in the penalty box, it's 11 meters away. That means you've got a cone like that. You kick the ball anywhere within there, it's going in the net. You start to go out to midfield and suddenly it becomes like this. And you have to be really precise to be able to now hit that net down there if you want to get it. So the idea is of angles is that you get a little bit of change of an angle over a long distance, it can result in huge error. And that's what really happened with the storm track. It's not like the storm tracks are off that much. They just had to be off a little bit, and then you get a 60-mile difference. So from my standpoint, it was very easy. I was not inconvenienced because I already had done the preparations of making sure I had solar power and battery backup. So I had 4 days without power, but I had power.
You said you had like kind of 5 lessons or
basically 5 pillars.
Okay.
Of why should you do solar? So solar by itself doesn't make sense because a lot of times you're producing electricity when you don't need it, or when you need it, it's not producing electricity. So you got to throw the batteries in there. So you really need to have solar and battery to be able to be almost independent. But that can be kind of costly, that combination. So if you then throw in the fact that you have something called time of use, where there's the carrot and stick approach that they incentivize you to take energy from the grid when it's cheap and not use it when it's expensive, you can actually make your electrical rates be like 50% of what they normally would be when you're using it. And you won't be inconvenienced because if you have the batteries when it's peak, you can still do, run the dishwasher or do something like that during peak hours, but it's coming off your batteries or maybe the solar, depending upon what's there. And then the last thing is the net metering, where you can then run it back and actually, get some money or some credits for doing that. So you put the 4 together there. Then you begin to have, so that 4, you now have a return on investment that's going to be under 10 years. But otherwise, you're looking at like 25 years, and a lot of people think that's a lot to do for solar. But then there's the 5th one, which is really hard to measure, and that's the insurance policy. I mean, that was the big one for me is the insurance policy, that I did not have to worry about what was going to happen, the cleanup that would have to happen afterwards. Because if you lose the power, you lose everything in the fridge, right? And for a lot of people, that can be hundreds of dollars. I've known people say, oh, I've lost $1,000 worth of food because they have a lot of stuff in there and the freezer, everything goes bad. So 1 or 2 days without it. And then, whatever else that sometimes, like just a cleanup, if you get a little bit of flooding, if you can get in there right away and start, throwing fans on it, and then maybe going in with a pressure washer or something like that to get the skanky water off of it and kind of clean it up with other stuff. You do that really quickly, you're going to save a lot of things. But if you don't have power for your power tools, you can't do that. So a lot of times making sure you have that meant your cleanup was going to be a lot faster. And the quicker you clean it up, the less damage there's going to be. So there's all sorts of reasons to want to have it.
Well, you made a good point too, because as we've discussed, it isn't cheap, but we're saying, okay, well, some people kind of hear you talk about your experience and, oh, great for you, you can afford it.
Right,
It doesn't help anyone else, but you're saying kind of does.
The other thing is that I was not taking up, the resources of everyone that had to come down here and be a first responder. So I wasn't in a shelter somewhere, taking that thing. That meant there was one more space for someone else. So no one had to worry about me. I took care of myself to make sure. And now I am in a position to actually then help other people.
So you're saying if you can afford it.
If you can't afford it, it's almost an obligation to do it, to make sure you don't then become an additional burden on those first responders that have to come in and take care of everything. So, listen to them, get out. I could see it was going to be a pretty bad storm. I didn't get out late, but let's say I delayed because I wanted to make sure I moved to the right place because the storm track was going all over the place. But, when they said that we want you out of here by 8 o'clock, I was out of there by 8 o'clock because that's what they said. And I was able to find a place that was definitely safe. So you definitely need to heed that advice and take care of yourself. So the others that did get impacted, they are able to take care of.
You want to talk about our little Starlink? You were reading some headlines. So if you guys don't know, obviously SpaceX is going to help with sending 120 Starlink kits. They probably already have to Florida, help people stay connected.
Yes. And I believe they're the big ones.
Some articles were saying that they were going to reposition their satellites.
I just,
No, time out.
I just laughed at it. Yes, something like yes.
So pretty much,
Elon Musk is going to reposition 120 Starlink satellites over Southwest Florida, and I just laughed at that headline. Like, it doesn't work that way.
yeah,
It
they
just,
didn't understand.
you cannot do it. And if you could, I mean, the only way you could reposition a satellite kind of over there is if like you're in geosynchronous and you're sort of move it on over there. And even then that takes time and takes propellant. And so the whole idea, snap my fingers and they're over there. It's like only a Bond villain can do something like that. It just, it doesn't work that way.
You're
And so
thinking,
they didn't understand it was the satellite kits that they need to have.
right.
Yes.
The
So
reporter or whoever just didn't, or was it the governor that said that?
when he kind of muddled it, and then the reporters didn't really, they don't understand Starlink. And then I saw, it wasn't one headline, I saw numerous headlines. And I had a colleague yesterday, and we had our in-house meeting, and he brought that up, that they were repositioning. I'm like, no. And then, then I went ballistic, what's my name? It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Don't you understand? These idiots, that it's the kits that they're going to have. And now what we're trying to figure out is that somewhere they said something about what those kits look like, which is way out of spec for the Starlink. So the first thing is, so many people don't know how Starlink works. And I have met people that are really clued in a lot of things in technology. And they saw my site. It's like, we didn't know that something like that existed. Oh, what's that? And I had to explain all things. Like, we never heard of this. How could you never heard of it? And they could do everything else. So we are in a bubble that a small number of people understand it. And so I can understand if the reporters are covering all these other things and they've never heard of Starlink, and they may not understand it, but it's a really quick remedial course to figure out what's going on, so that when you understand what they're doing, say, oh, they're just putting the receivers there. They're lacking dishes. That's what they're lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I'm pretty sure they're not doing it. They maybe, and I would like to have asked Jonathan yesterday, the day before, are there some orbital parameters that you can tweak a little bit that would maybe increase the coverage just a tad in one particular area? That's the only possibility.
Steven says general media has no idea of Starlink. I feel like not just Starlink. I think, you and I are so immersed in our echo chamber that we think that everyone knows what's going on with, Tesla. And no.
Yeah. Now, what we speculated is that the specs that we heard, and we believe these specs are absolutely bogus, and I think you confirmed that they're bogus. Is that correct? That they said that every single one of them is able to have a radius of 13 miles and up to 1,000 users.
Yes.
And like, no, not 13 miles. Sometimes you're lucky with the router to get 13 feet. So, they would have to boost it. So you'd have a mesh and you'd be able to bring that out. But even then, I think that would be a limited area you can do it. And my understanding is that with the professional version, it's maybe up to 100 users possible that could be connected to the router. So it's a much smaller number. So now I've speculated, and I think this is something they should put together, and a lot of other people agree, is that you could make a portable cell tower. And the portable cell tower could be powered by solar, could have battery backup, and the connectivity could be with Starlink heavy, or what they call high performance. And you could just parachute that in wherever you want, and then just this tower that would kind of go up, have the connectivity, and now you have people within a certain area that they get connected just with their cell phone. They don't have to do anything else. I was thinking, I wonder if they're working on something like that. And I'll tell you, if they aren't, someone should be.
You just got the heavy version, right?
Yes. I decided. Yeah. So it's up on my roof right now. So that's what I'm using. Okay. And the reason I decided to do that is it's been great for everything that I've needed. I've had absolutely no problem. And where I'm up on that roof, I know you can guys see there's absolutely nothing blocking my view. So I don't have to worry about obstructions. However, I do have to worry about the heavy downpours in Florida. So when we have a really heavy thunderstorm, and not just, it has to be heavy rain. So it's no problem with rain, but really heavy rain, I can get knocked out for minutes at a time. So I'm just kind of curious to say, I wonder if the high performance version will do any better in those rains. And of course, I put it up like 4 days before Ian comes in, thinking, should I test it during Ian, and wondering. And my base was down there pretty solid, but you know where it snaps in? I don't think that is really hurricane proof. And interesting enough, I get an email from Starlink because they know the area you're in. They say, ooh, based on the area you're in, we recommend you take it down because it's only rated up to winds of 65. So that was really nice, is that, I didn't have to reach out and ask them. They were telling everyone around here, take it down. So I was not able to test it out in a hurricane as much as that would have been interesting. And since I've been back, we haven't had any heavy rain. So I haven't been able to test it in the heavy rains yet. And we're having what looks like is going to be many days without rain, ironically,
Scott,
after a hurricane.
JVGA17 says the new marine version of Starlink has some wild
Capabilities. Yes.
Degree coverage.
Yes. Now, the high performance also has 140 degrees coverage. So the high performance looks like basically two of the dishes together. So they've gone from 100 to that. And I think the marine version, they have a different way of mounting it. So they mount it pretty much flat. And the high performance version I have is on the normal kind of stand and moves around. And that's the part that's a little bit rinky dink as far as really, really high winds. Mm-hmm. So the marine is very clear. Poof, that thing's bolted down and that can handle, I think they said, winds of 175 miles per hour. And so when you're out in the ocean, you pretty much just want to be flat, pointing on up, and you'll be able to see everything. So it's basically the same thing. So this is a trick. I mean, if you think the marine has good specs, just go ahead and for a lot less, not $5,000, but for $110, you can go ahead and get the same version, except you kind of go out of your cell. It might be, oh no, wait, if you want to use that in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, we're not going to allow you to be connected. So there is a certain portability issue, and I don't know if the RV version of that would be considered official out in the middle of the ocean.
Let's see. Colton says cord is long enough on Starlink. I bet if it got blown off the roof, it would reposition on the ground and find.
Yeah. It probably would. It's just like, it's depending upon. It's anywhere between 75 feet and 82. So the high performance version is now 82 feet long, and you can get a cord to 150. The thing is, I did not want to test that thing and then have it become a projectile, because most of the damage that happens during a hurricane to windows is not from the wind. It's actually from projectiles being tossed around by the wind. So it's like, well, I don't want to be that guy who didn't, who decided to put something up there and it blew around and ended up damaging a structure somewhere.
Well, Scott, Steven, who's been watching our live
stream. Oh boy. Yeah.
Says, what are your thoughts on Tesla's Optimus?
I don't have any thoughts at all. Nothing I would want to share with anyone. No, as you know, I've been pretty active both with you and John talking about that. I have lots and lots of thoughts, but in order to distill it down, a lot of people are just wildly saying, oh, it's got to do this, got to do this. Like, there's a very narrow mission focus here. There's no mission creep going on. They want it to work in the factory. Yeah. So don't keep on thinking, but it can't do this, it can't do that. So the first thing I've said is that, look at any factory position and look at the job description. And where in the job description does it say doing backflips? Nowhere. Okay. So you don't need a robot that does backflips. Let's remember that. The other thing is that, like, well, that hand, what can it pick up an egg without breaking it? Look in a factory floor. Are there eggs being put into cars that I'm, not aware of? No. That most of them are very hard kind of objects that that Optimus will be able to work. That gripper is kind of designed for that. So what they're probably doing is they're looking at the factory floor and a lot of the manual operations that are there and saying, okay, what are the 80% cases we cover? We know there's 20% that are going to be really tricky. Let's not worry about them. Let's just see if we can go ahead and get those done. What are the kind of parts that we're picking up? And it was mentioned again today. It's like, well, how can you tell if it's a hard ball or softball with your cameras? And like, I can tell. I know the difference between a baseball and a Nerf. I don't have to touch it. I can look at it, and I know if I want to pick up a baseball, I'm going to grip a little bit harder. And if I see it's a Nerf ball, it's going to be a little bit softer. So you don't have to have necessarily tactile feedback. And one of the things I mentioned yesterday, when they took the ultrasonics off of the Teslas now, that's been a big to-do about that.
Tell people about that, because I
they've removed the ultrasonics, and there could be one or two reasons. Is that it turns out there's also a shortage of ultrasonics out there, just like there were for radars. But and go to Dr. Know-It-All's channel. John has done a good breakdown. We'll be doing some more on that. Is that it's showing that there's a certain amount of confidence. You don't really need the ultrasonics. You only need the ultrasonics when you're going very slow in parking situations, and they believe they can do that with the cameras. But what that tells me is everyone was wondering, oh, okay, the Optimus hand, are they going to put sensors and everything else in there? It doesn't look like there are any, but you think they're going to. And after I saw it, I was like, nope, they're not putting any in there. That's it. That's it. They're just going to go. They're going to look at the servos themselves, and they'll be able to measure sort of the forces coming off of that to be able to tell where you are positionally. And then they'll just use the camera to be able to tell it. So if it's going over and picking up something and it says, oh, that's a Nerf ball, I need to be very gentle picking it up. Or no, that's a baseball, I'm going to go down and grip it a little bit harder because I can tell. And the thing is, if you want to trick the robot, you can trick the robot. That's not the idea. In the factory floor, they're saying, no, we're not going to be practical jokers when it comes to Optimus. Things are going to be structured in a particular way, and we're going to make sure that it has a library and a knowledge of what these different objects are. It can recognize that and know, oh, there's your bottle of water. You need to use a kind of a certain gripping algorithm for that. You just go ahead and do it. So they're going to do a lot with software and a lot with neural networks, and those neural networks will learn how to get more and more delicate with time. And it was sort of brought up as if you think about how does the hatch mechanisms work in your car, right? So when you close the hatch in the Model Y, if you put your arm or something down there, it'll sense it and go up. Wow, how's it doing that? Any idea how it does that?
No.
Okay, well, all right. The way it's doing it is that you have a servo or motor that's pushing it down. And they have a certain expectation of how much force it's going to take to close that thing. Okay. And that force is directly related to the amount of power it's consuming. And if suddenly you give it resistance, then the power level is going to go up, and it's going to notice that and say, whoa, wait a minute, stop. It's out of parameters. That must mean there's an object there.
Ah.
Okay, so it's inferring it. It's not seeing an object. It's not a sensor. It's not something else there. That's what's going on here when Optimus closes. They're going to close, and they know it takes a certain amount of power in order for my fingers to close. And if I keep on doing that, I know that there's no object because I'm not feeling any resistance. But as soon as I feel the resistance, then I know, oh, okay, stop. And then what you can then decide to do is like, all right, it was at like a sharp peak. So if it's like all of a sudden the power just jumps up like that, you're like, well, that was a hard surface I just hit. But if it's like, oh, it's a little bit of resistance, then you know, oh, that's something squishy. and you'll be able to tell it. So in the neural net, we'll be able to figure it out over time. You just keep on saying, oh, let's give them a baseball, let's give them a nerve, let's give them a golf ball, let's give them this object, let's give them that object. And then, they'll keep on doing it, and eventually they'll kind of understand, oh, that's what I need to do to grasp and grip. So clearly I have a lot to say about Optimus, and that was just the hand. I mean, we haven't talked about the legs and the arms and everything else. There are plenty of videos if we want more follow-up videos. Well, and again, Gary was great, wasn't he? The other day talking about that.
I should mention we did do a 2-hour live stream, and I finally took the time to break it up into chapters. So there is a live stream still on my channel if you want to go watch that. But we're happy to have more conversations, obviously, as this evolves.
Yes. This has nothing to do with today's launch, but here we are talking about Optimus again.
Well, because it's still so exciting and still so recent, right? So Irfan wants to know, does it sense fragility on vision or after touch?
Well, I think it's kind of a combination of, the touch will tell it when it's truly fragile. And eventually you're going to want to have maybe tactile sensors and everything else when you start having the Tesla bot that's coming into the home. But remember, we're talking about version 1.0 in the factory and learning. And I think I mentioned it in the other live stream. What is the Confucius or someone said something like, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step.
Right.
So if we don't start taking those first steps, we'll never get to the goal. So this whole idea of just saying, oh, it's a joke, I'm not doing this. No, they're moving pretty fast. And they've got the application for that in the factory, which will be a big payoff really quickly because they will be able to start saving money.
Well, Gregory wants to know, and you would know better because you actually have a Model Y, how well do the Tesla cameras work in sloppy snow or muddy conditions?
I don't know because we don't have sloppy snow down in Florida yet, but I do know it will come back and it will say.
That was my cat, if you're curious.
That was your cat. By the way, what is the name of your cat?
Well, I have two. Oliver was just in my lap. Pinocchio was sitting behind my computer, and he just tried to shut me down. So,
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering, say, how'd that other one grab that? So, okay, you've got two there. That makes
like,
sense. So,
he's like, why are
all I know is I get these warnings that say FSD is degraded when it starts to rain or get a little bit foggy out. So right
Okay.
now, it really only likes good driving conditions. Eventually, it'll get better, but right now, yeah, it notices like, whoa, I'm not seeing so well. Or sometimes it'll say, I can't see anything out of the left pillar or the right pillar camera. You need to clean it. And a lot of times it's just, it may not be dirty. Sometimes it's just too dark on that side. I'll be driving along and it's very dark and it says, I can't see anything. And then it doesn't like it. But that was an earlier version. So I think they've improved it. The other thing I noticed is I was having some issues and someone said, do the camera recalibration. And I did the camera recalibration and suddenly it was, wow, it's a lot better. So that's something I recommend to anyone has it that thinks it's not working is do that recal.
So we might as well talk about this now. We have some people watching. Does anyone recognize this woman?
Do you want me to make the announcement? Yes, I do. That's Gwen Shotwell. You're giving me the honor of being able to say this? Okay.
Well, we'll say it together. So how many of you guys have heard of the Ascend conference?
Probably not many. I have, just because I have some friends that are attending.
So it's going from October 24th to 26th in Las Vegas. And it is basically, bringing together the space's leading industry luminaries, thinkers, biggest companies. The president of SpaceX will be there. It is for serious space enthusiasts. So anyway, I wanted to go to this because we all love space and I figured it'd be a good opportunity. It's quite expensive to get in. So I tried to apply as media, and not only do they want me there as media, they want to fly me out there and put me in a hotel. And I'm very excited for this opportunity. So I will be covering that later this month. And I'm so excited.
It's a great opportunity. I mean, it is the definitive conference for aerospace.
Right.
So anyone's an aerospace engineer, they belong to I think it's the AIAA, and then it's sponsored by them.
Right.
And our good mutual friend Anna will be there too. She was invited. She got a scholarship to go there. So it's not only the people who are established, but the people who are up and coming. A lot of students will be there. Of course, it's going to be a lot of rocket science talks. A lot is going to be way over, but there's going to be some influential people there, and you have a front row seat to everything, which is great.
Gwen Shotwell will be there, and a lot of you have asked. I've even had some emails from you saying, "Oh, you should interview her." Well, and so I've interviewed, or I've emailed like through her assistant, and they've always declined because she's too busy. So she will be there, and I think as a media person, I'll have greater access. I'm really hoping everyone just let's cross our fingers together that we'll be able to get some insight from.
Yeah. And so if anyone proposes a question for Ellie, there's a couple of ground rules. One, don't ask her a question she's already been asked before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
So make sure it's unique.
The same goes for Elon, because man, I mean, it's like crazy how many are they just not doing their homework, or they're low hanging fruit questions? Why?
Yeah. So these questions, we've got to put a lot of thought in. I mean, I've been trying to come up with some myself. Like, I wonder what would I ask if I had the chance.
Well, and we talked about not just fixating on the fact that she's a successful woman in the space industry. It's true, but I'm sure she wants to be asked about more than just that narrative, right?
Yeah. She is a very successful. She is the head of a space company who just happens to be a woman.
Yeah, right.
That's really the way it should be seen. Yeah.
Right. And what an inspirational person at that. Jim Callahan says, congrats on AI Day 2, by the way. Thank you so much. That was totally unexpected. Again, it's weird how I was supposed to be on a plane to Florida that day, and then the weather happened, and I just kind of, went with my gut on what to do. And then I was like, oh, maybe I should, impulsively drive 11 hours down to California. Why not? And no ticket. and it just worked out. So that was really cool. Let's see. Colton says his first questions to Elon on Twitter and subsequent in person were mostly from the nerds in Discord. They're talking about Tim Dodd. So I have a Discord. I don't know. Should I start using it more? Are you guys active on Discord? Because I don't. You have a Discord, right, Scott?
No, I don't, but John does, and so I participate in that, and it can be pretty good. But after a while, if you know,
Yeah.
I can go into Tim's Discord and I can go into Angry Astronauts and in Marcus, but whew, it gets busy in there. I mean, it's just like if you want to spend all your life, I mean, it's
Anyway, I have one here. Let me see if I can share. Oh gosh, see, I'm so bad with this. I don't even know how to share share my invite. Anyone know how to do this? I would like to share it with you guys. Let's see. Do I just share my? Yeah, I only use Discord really to talk to Marcus House.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
wait, invite people? Is that how I do it?
Yeah, there's a way that they can get invited in. It's
I think I have a link.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add my link. If you guys are on Discord, hit me up.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't guarantee I'll answer you. Okay, wait. I see a friend in here. Melvin John Ashu. Hey, he says hello, Ellie. Melvin John is actually one of my first Starlink interviews and also one of my most recent Starlink interviews. Oh, there's the Discord sound. Someone just messaged me. So I visited him in person to go to the Hoh Reservation. This is in Washington. I realized I made a whole video about this and I just kept saying Forks. Not everyone knows where Forks is. Forks is in Washington. Forks is like the Twilight center of the world, right? A lot of the Twilight filming was done there. However, I'm going to turn my Discord sound off. Sorry. The house, Edward Cullen's house, is not in Forks. So that's the vampire guy, the Robert Pattinson, I believe. That's about 40 minutes from me here in Portland. So fun fact, if you go to Forks, you're not going to see that house. But you will see other stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff here in Oregon. There's actually the last Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon. You guys remember those days? Blockbuster? Anyone?
Okay.
Blockbuster.
Oh, Blockbuster. I thought you were talking about like a movie.
No,
so that's where the very last one was.
Yes. I want to make a video on my sub channel about that just because nostalgia, right? Yeah, Melvin John says you might see me in Forks. So if you guys want to check out that interview, it was super cool, you know, being able to go to the reservation in person and also drive through a street where there's like a Starlink unit on every single roof, pretty much.
That's great. That's amazing. Yeah.
Okay, so Gregory says, ask Shotwell how they are going to select the first person to walk on Mars. How are they going to do it?
How would you pick the first person to go on Mars? Wow.
I mean, we know a lot of people want to go, but you know, are they qualified? I feel like emotionally, you got to pass a lot of tests to be.
Yeah, qualified. I mean, first you got to be on the crew. Yeah, you got to make the crew, and then anyone on the crew would be able to do it. And I wonder if it'll be a group thing, whether you have like a couple ladders, everyone jumps off the ladder at the same time. And then there'll be some guys with cameras looking like, that's the one that hit the ground first.
Man, let's see. Okay, I think I got some new Discord people. Thank you. Let's see. Shotwell is fantastic. Nice giving her credit. A lot more than Elon going on with this amazing team. Absolutely. I feel like so many people are just Elon. It's like, how many people work for SpaceX and Tesla now? Thousands and thousands and thousands.
Yeah. And it's true. And Elon keeps on mentioning that it is a team that's doing all these things. Yet everyone seems to focus on thinking that he's doing it all, and then he always reminds everyone there's a good team.
Which do you think is a smaller workforce, Neuralink or Boring Company? I'd think Neuralink. At this point.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
But they're expanding. They're expanding right now.
Yeah, it's kind of different because in Neuralink, I think it's mainly just researchers, right? Whereas if you take something like Boring Company, you've got probably a lot of engineers, and then you have a lot of people that would actually be operating the equipment. So, same in Tesla, you'll have the people who are working in the factories and the people that are the engineers, the blue collar, white collar. So I think Neuralink is probably just all white collar.
Baja Juicy says, yes, do a blockbuster show. All right. I will make a blockbuster video and put it on my sub channel because I don't want to spam Alien Space with just totally unrelated content.
Mhm.
That's why I made a sub channel. Man, got some more people on the Discord. Thanks for signing up. Maybe this will inspire me to actually use it more. I will say, I am also trying to get into the Neuralink presentation on Halloween at the end of the month. It looks like I have a pretty decent shot of going through some connections. So if I get into that, I'll be 4 for 4 for the Elon presentations this year. But well, I guess I didn't go to the Starship. But I ordered. You're hearing it here first. I ordered a Tesla bot suit. And I want to know, should I wear it to the Neuralink presentation? I think I should because it's Halloween. It's literally on Halloween.
Yeah. Everyone else is going to be dressed up.
So
I think so.
Want me to wear the Tesla bot suit, I'm actually thinking of making like a series of me doing stupid stuff, not like reckless, but rock climbing in the Tesla bot suit. And I don't know.
Be careful, let's listen.
Why?
Well, I mean, just rock climbing in general. I mean, just make sure that that's not something that's going to interfere with what you're doing.
Oh, yeah. Well,
in a controlled environment is fine.
I need my hands. Okay, I'll just do like really easy ones. Elon is the face, but Gwen is the muscle of SpaceX. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jim Callahan says it worked for everyday astronaut wearing suit. Yeah, it'll just be a different kind of suit, but why not?
Yeah, that's true.
Although he's been so happy to ditch the suit. I remember I interviewed him, if you guys haven't seen that interview yet, and he was like, yeah, I don't miss the suit ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, we've like interviewed so many cool people in just like the last month. Really awesome.
Yeah, it has. It's rather interesting that I'm just thinking one day it's like so many different people we met.
Yeah.
Felix and Tim in the same afternoon. That's crazy.
Someone said on one of those 2 videos, they're like, do you have any more clothes or what? Yes, I was wearing the same outfit because I literally went back to back.
It was crazy.
Yes, I have more clothes, but I interviewed Felix first, and then Tim was like, hey, I finally have time after 8 months of waiting to coordinate this.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right.
Then there was the meetup right after that. Because that was the launch.
Oh, that's right. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean it's like the videos kind of came out at different times, but the thing is everything transpired over like a 6 or 8 hour period.
We were busy that day.
Yeah, it was very busy.
Okay, Aaron says, any new stuff on the SpaceX EVA? Man, I haven't heard much new about it. Gary would be a good person to talk to about that. I mean, maybe he's more. Well, he's
he might know, but that's
spacesuit.
Mm-hmm.
You heard anything new about it? I mean, I know that Jared and the crew are doing like so much training right now.
Yeah,
and he's not the only one actively training right now and posting all over social media about it. We also have Mike Mongo and the NFT team.
Oh, that's what I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah. So Mike's story is so interesting. Mike Mongo is in Florida. He's training to go to space. He's 57, 50. He's in his 50s. Has always wanted to go to space and really thought that his time had come and gone. And when I interviewed him, I'm like, okay, how are you going to space? And he bought an NFT. In fact, Gary bought that same NFT and Gary didn't get in. So Uplift Aerospace, which actually that is, I believe, at least one of their team members is out of Utah. So I'm not sure where exactly Uplift is, but they auctioned off. They were supposed to be for 1 seat, and they loved all these people so much. So now it's what did he call it? Space plus 5.
Yes. Space plus 5. Yes.
So they're training and like. I think it's cool because they're being so transparent and like active on social media with it. And then yeah,
Well,
obviously
he's
Polaris.
he's pretty busy because remember, say, okay, we had that busy day with the first launch, and then the next morning got pretty busy because we accidentally met Mike Monga. He was coming from an interview. He
Yeah.
got lunch at Surfinista, and then he was off to another. And then
So
we arranged an interview the next day, and then I think he had come from an interview to your interview and was going to get another. So
yeah.
it's like nonstop interviews.
Okay, I want to address this question real quick. Melvin John, who I just interviewed recently on the Ho Reservation, he said, have you ran into anyone that has traveling Starlink? I haven't run into anyone, but I do know that a YouTuber that goes by The Fine Print is using his Starlink to do van life and gaming in the middle of forest.
Yeah, there is, and I think Dave Lee was definitely using it
That's right.
on his trip, and John doesn't have official Starlink. The only way he could get Starlink was to get the RV. So he has it at home, but he doesn't have the higher rates because he has to be running it as in the RV mode. So there are some, yeah.
Yeah. I did hear through the grapevine that they're working on a portable dish that will be iPad sized.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, NFTs will identify everything. I still have my Axiom patch. Well, a lot of people are very anti-NFT. Like I made a video about these space companies, private space companies getting into NFTs, and I don't think a lot of you guys liked it. I just think there's still a lot of skepticism with NFTs, which is understandable. However, I mean, man, you look at Mike Mongo, and I don't think he regrets buying that NFT. It's still very early. I get that, but it is. I don't think it's something to completely ignore. Just like Meta, right? With Facebook, it's like I'm not really into it, but I feel like okay, it'll evolve.
Eventually we'll get there. Yeah, it's a question of whether it's going to be Meta or whether it's going to be Omniverse from NVIDIA.
Let's see. Roger says Starlink is a game changer for yachts. So,
yeah, sure. Absolutely. And for anyone that's remote, I am really impressed that it's able to function and how easy it is to set up. So during the hurricane, I came back and I had to wait for a bridge to open before I could go across. And there was no connectivity around there. And I had brought the smaller dish with me. So it wasn't really RV mode, but I was still in my cell. And I just put it in the driveway, out in the parking lot, set it up, plugged it in to the 12 volt. I had a small inverter for that. And I had my connectivity. I was up and running without any problems. So it's remarkable that you can do that. And it was Wi-Fi, just everything was streaming down really fast. I was able to keep up to date with everything. So it is a game changer without a doubt.
Totally. Well, and I saw Elon tweeting about Starlink the other day, and he was saying that they're still not, making money from it.
Yeah. So the yachts that'll be, it might get, when you're inside a port of call, it might get kind of busy when everyone has it there, and then the capacity we get. But when you're out in the ocean, there's no one nearby, which means you are going to just have bandwidth like you cannot believe.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be in that whole area pretty much by yourself.
Oh man, my cats are just going nuts.
Yeah, and I'm smelling that like lunch is almost ready here. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to everyone for joining us. Again, I mean, seriously, it was fun.
Yep. It is.
We should do more of these. I think maybe you guys want that.
Yeah, and pick a topic or something like that. We're talking about sort of going over a few things and maybe having better props to explain things like ISP or max-Q or rocket equation and others.
Yeah, if you guys are interested in more of that like education aspect too, let us know, because Scott is very good, just like Jonathan McDowell is very good at explaining these
things. He's fantastic. He's fantastic.
For all of us to kind of wrap our mind around. So thank you so much, Scott, for co-hosting, co-narrating.
Wow. Hopefully it worked out in the field and everything. I still have to go up top and get my phone. I wonder what it's recording. Hopefully it hasn't been too breezy, so I think it's still up.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, we'll expect the the crew to dock to the ISS around 5 o'clock your time. So just waiting
Eastern
around
time, right? Yep.
for a while.
My
Yeah.
time being East Coast time, right? Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you soon. Have a great rest of your day. I
Okay.
don't know what time it is where you are,
Thank
but
you all. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. Yep. Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
It's a great launch.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Okay.